Karen was 20 when Close to You came out, and I was 23. And such nasty, vicious things written about us. Really awful things.
Did you take it personally?
Well, yeah.
For decades, the world knew the music, the voice, and the magic of the Carpenters. But behind the fame and success was a story few truly understood. Now, at 78, Richard Carpenter is finally opening up about his sister Karen, and what he reveals is deeply emotional. This isn't just about music or memories. It's about loss, pressure, and the hidden struggles behind the spotlight. What really happened to Karen Carpenter? And why has Richard stayed silent for so long? Join us in this video as we reveal the details. The truth he couldn't say before. For many years after Karen Carpenter passed away in February 1983, her brother, Richard Carpenter, stayed quiet about the painful rumors that surrounded her life. When he did speak, he chose his words carefully. He often focused on the music they created together, gently steering away from the deeper, more personal struggles Karen had faced. But time has a way of changing perspective. As Richard grew older, especially into his 70s, something shifted. In later interviews, he began to open up about what had long been left unsaid. He admitted that Karen's battle with anorexia nervosa was far more serious than most people ever realized back then. In the 1970s, the condition wasn't widely understood. There were no clear conversations about it, no real awareness, and very little support, especially within the music industry. Richard made it clear that they weren't ignoring the problem. The truth is, they didn't fully understand it. The knowledge and tools simply weren't there at the time. He also spoke about the pressure Karen lived under. Not one single thing, but a buildup of many. There were constant expectations about how she should look, the need to appear perfect, the exhausting cycle of touring and recording, and the way people focused more on her body than her voice. It all added up. Richard emphasized something important. Karen's illness wasn't caused by just one person or one moment. It was the result of many factors coming together: family dynamics, industry demands, and her own personal sensitivity. What stands out most in his later reflections is not blame, but regret. He has described Karen as someone who was silenced far too soon. Not just a life that ended, but a voice that the world lost before it had the chance to fully grow. He once said that a voice like hers only comes around once every few generations, and he truly believed that, if she had lived, she would have kept singing and recording for many years to come. Richard also turned the lens on himself. He admitted that at the time, he was deeply focused on the music, the arrangements, the production, the structure. And because of that, he didn't fully see just how much his sister was struggling behind the scenes. When he finally addressed the rumors later in life, he didn't deny them. He clarified them. He revealed that the truth was far more painful and complex than people had imagined. Karen Carpenter didn't lose her life simply because she wanted to be thin. She was overwhelmed, caught in a storm of pressures and personal battles during a time when no one really knew how to help. And for Richard, telling that truth has become part of honoring her memory. Not as a perfect image or a public myth, but as a real person, with real struggles, whose story still matters. But where did her pain and silence really begin? Keep watching to find out. The quiet beginning behind a legendary voice. Karen Carpenter was born on March 2, 1950, in New Haven, Connecticut, into a home where music wasn't just present, it was measured, compared, and ranked. From the very beginning, there was a clear order in the family, and Karen was not at the top. Her older brother, Richard Carpenter, born October 15, 1946, was quickly seen as the gifted one. He showed natural talent on the piano and accordion, understood music theory with ease, and carried himself with a seriousness that impressed adults. Conversations at home, expectations, and praise all centered around him. Richard was seen as the future. Richard was the talent. Karen, on the other hand, grew up quietly watching. She was always surrounded by music, but not by attention. Their father, Harold, owned a large record collection that filled their home with jazz, classical pieces, and popular songs of the time. Karen listened closely, picking up on harmonies and vocal phrasing long before she could explain them. But listening kept her in the background, and that fit the family dynamic. No one pushed her to explore her own talent. No one pointed at her curiosity and called it potential. Early on, she understood her role: to support, not lead. Their mother, Agnes Carpenter, made that structure even clearer. She consistently favored Richard and was often critical of Karen. The imbalance wasn't hidden. If Richard was upset, Karen was blamed. For decades, if Karen did well, especially in ways that might outshine her brother, she was corrected or brushed aside. Even small childhood moments carried weight. Once, during a neighborhood baseball game, Karen played better than Richard and was chosen ahead of him. Instead of pride, Agnes reacted with anger. The message was clear: success was only acceptable if it didn't disturb the family order. In June 1963, when Karen was just 13, the family moved from Connecticut to Downey, California. The move was presented as necessary, but in reality, it was centered on Richard's future. California meant opportunity, studios, musicians, and a path forward for him. Karen's life, in comparison, was treated as flexible. She left behind friends and familiarity without being asked how she felt. In this new place, Richard quickly began performing in clubs, sometimes even lying about his age to get on stage. His dreams were supported. Karen adapted quietly, once again overlooked. Their father, Harold Carpenter, wasn't harsh, but he was distant in a different way. Born in China to missionary parents, he was gentle and avoided conflict. He loved his children and loved music, but when Agnes took control, he rarely challenged her. As Karen began to show signs of struggle, pulling away emotionally, changing physically, he didn't step in strongly. His silence wasn't cruel, but it allowed the imbalance in the family to grow deeper and more permanent. This kind of environment didn't create sudden damage. It worked slowly. Karen learned that approval came with conditions, that being seen could come with consequences, that speaking up didn't always bring comfort or protection. So she adjusted. She made herself smaller, easier, less noticeable. Long before the world ever heard her voice, she had already begun to believe that her needs came second. That quiet lesson followed her into adulthood and shaped much of what came next. But before she ever sang for an audience, Karen found her first real voice somewhere unexpected: the drums. In high school in Downey, she joined the school band for a simple reason: to avoid gym class. At first, she was given a glockenspiel, an instrument she immediately disliked. It felt too light, too exposed, and didn't connect with her at all. Then one day, she saw another student playing the drums, and everything changed. The drums were loud, physical, impossible to ignore. For the first time, she felt drawn to something that allowed her to take up space. She asked to switch instruments, and once she did, she gave herself to it completely. Her parents bought her a Ludwig drum kit for $300, which was a serious investment at the time. Karen practiced endlessly, pushing herself until her fingers would bleed. Her mother kept bandages close because it happened so often. Within a year, she was already playing complex jazz rhythms that most beginners wouldn't even attempt. She practiced paradiddles, triplets, and marching patterns every day, studying under jazz teacher Bill Douglas and absorbing everything she could. Richard later said it looked like she had been born in a drum factory. By 1965, at just 15 years old, Richard formed the Richard Carpenter Trio. Karen was the drummer. She didn't sing. The group was unusual, with no lead vocalist, a tuba doubling as bass, and heavy instrumental focus. Still, they managed to do something remarkable. In June 1966, they won the Hollywood Bowl Battle of the Bands, a major event judged by industry professionals. The win brought them a contract with RCA Records, but nothing came of it. RCA didn't understand their sound. The recordings they made were never released, and the group was quietly dropped. What disappeared in that moment wasn't just a record deal, it was recognition. Karen had already proven herself as a powerful and skilled drummer, even earning the John Philip Sousa Band Award shortly after. Yet even within her own group, attention remained on Richard's arrangements and direction. Karen's talent was there, strong and undeniable, but still not fully seen. For Karen, the drums weren't just an instrument, they were a shield. Behind the drum kit, she felt safe. It was the one place where she didn't need to ask for permission to exist, where she could be loud, present, and in control. For a while, it gave her a sense of belonging she hadn't found anywhere else. But that sense of safety wouldn't last forever. Her journey changed when fame suddenly forced her into the limelight. Stay tuned to find out more. Pushed into the spotlight. When Herb Alpert signed Karen and Richard Carpenter to A&M Records in April 1969, their lives changed almost overnight. What started as simple demo tapes recorded in a garage quickly turned into professional studio sessions, released singles, and growing public attention. Everything moved fast, faster than either of them had ever experienced. At first, Karen remained where she felt most comfortable, behind the drums. She sang while playing, something very few performers could do with her level of skill and control. It was natural for her. It was safe. But the industry saw a problem. Audiences began to complain that they couldn't see her clearly. At 5'4", sitting behind a full drum kit, Karen was physically hidden from view. To record executives, this wasn't about her comfort or her connection to the music. It became a marketing issue. Their solution sounded simple on the surface: move Karen to the front of the stage and bring in a separate touring drummer. What no one openly addressed was what that change meant to her. Drums were never just a starting point for Karen. They were her refuge, the place where her anxiety softened, where she didn't have to face a crowd directly, where everything inside her felt balanced. Taking that away wasn't a small adjustment. It was a deep break from the one space where she felt secure. By the early 1970s, Karen was no longer regularly playing drums during live shows. Cubby O'Brien stepped in behind the kit, while Karen stood alone at center stage. Now she was fully visible, expected to smile, connect, and deliver flawless performances night after night. She did exactly that, and from the outside, it worked beautifully. Songs like "Close to You," "We've Only Just Begun," and "Top of the World" took over the radio. Awards followed. Grammys followed. The Carpenters became one of the most successful acts of the decade. But beneath that success, something quieter and more troubling was unfolding. Karen's anxiety began to grow. The pressure to look perfect became heavier as the spotlight narrowed directly onto her. Behind the drums, she had felt like part of something. Standing at the microphone, she felt exposed, watched, judged, measured. Around this same time, the earliest signs of her eating disorder began to appear. Control over her body slowly became a way to cope with everything else she couldn't control. And in a painful twist, just as her public identity became stronger and more defined, her private sense of self began to fall apart. The industry celebrated her voice while quietly removing the very foundation that had once helped her feel steady. By the mid-1970s, the success of the Carpenters was impossible to deny. But so was the visible decline of Karen Carpenter's health. Fans who had grown up listening to her began to notice the changes. With each tour, she looked thinner. With every television appearance, more fragile. People talked. Journalists speculated. Photos spread. Yet, the conversation rarely went deeper than surface-level observations. People focused on how she looked, but not on what might be causing it. At the time, eating disorders were rarely discussed in public, especially within the entertainment world. Anorexia nervosa was widely misunderstood. Many dismissed it as simple dieting or vanity, not recognizing it as a serious and life-threatening illness. Karen's condition wasn't treated with urgency. It was quietly managed, almost as if it were an inconvenience rather than a crisis. In 1975, when the Carpenters canceled their tour because Karen was too weak to continue, the explanation given to the public was vague. There was no honesty, no clarity, and more importantly, no clear action that followed. Inside the family, there was confusion and silence. Richard would later admit that they didn't truly understand what was happening. There were no clear resources at the time, no widespread awareness, no guide for how to handle something like this. Their mother, Agnes, remained controlling but distant, more focused on keeping things looking normal than facing the truth. Their father, Harold, stayed quiet, unable or unwilling to push for serious medical help. And Karen herself? She downplayed it. She kept going. She continued to perform even as her body weakened. By the late 1970s, things became even more difficult. Richard began struggling with his own health, developing an addiction to prescription sleeping pills. Eventually, he had to step away and enter rehabilitation. During that time, Karen lost one of the few emotional anchors she had. Without that support, her condition worsened. What had once been quiet rumors became a clear reality to those closest to her. But publicly, nothing changed. The music continued. The image stayed polished. The smiles never disappeared. The rumors grew louder, but they were never truly addressed. Karen was praised for her strength, her professionalism, and her ability to keep going no matter what. But no one stopped to ask the harder question, whether that constant endurance was slowly destroying her. Years later, Richard would look back and recognize the cost of that silence. The signs had been there. People noticed. People worried. But without understanding, no real intervention, and without honest conversations, Karen was left to face something overwhelming on her own. A battle no one should have to fight alone. But what happened when the spotlight turned to personal life? Let's find out. A life beyond the spotlight. Behind the fame and success, Karen Carpenter lived a life that was far more personal and often more complicated than most people ever saw. Her relationship with her family remained layered and difficult. When the family moved from Connecticut to Los Angeles, the focus was clear. It was done to support Richard Carpenter and his future in music. At the time, Karen's own talent wasn't fully recognized. Even as her career began to grow, she stayed close to home, continuing to live with her parents until 1974. It wasn't just about comfort. It reflected how deeply tied she still was to that family dynamic. By 1976, Karen made a move that symbolized a step toward independence. She bought 2 apartments in Century City and combined them into one. It became her personal space, filled with touches that reflected who she really was. Even the doorbell was unique. It chimed the opening notes of "We've only just begun," a quiet reminder of her success, but also something playful and personal. Away from the stage, Karen had simple joys. She loved collecting Disney memorabilia and had a genuine passion for sports, especially softball and baseball. As a child, she often played baseball in the street with neighborhood kids, and notably, she was sometimes chosen ahead of her brother for games. She didn't just play casually either. She studied baseball statistics carefully and became a devoted fan of the New York Yankees. In the early 1970s, she even became a pitcher on a celebrity all-star softball team, showing a competitive and energetic side that many fans never got to see. Her circle of friends included well-known names like Petula Clark, Olivia Newton-John, and Dionne Warwick. Despite her fame, she connected easily with others and valued those friendships. At the same time, Karen held personal beliefs that didn't always match the cultural changes happening around her. During the rise of the women's liberation movement, she expressed more traditional views, once saying she believed a wife should cook for her husband because men weren't skilled in the kitchen, and that she planned to do so when she married. It showed a different side of her thinking, one shaped more by personal values than public trends. In her early interviews, Karen often said she wasn't interested in marriage or dating. She believed that constant touring would make it nearly impossible for a relationship to survive. She even said plainly that as long as she was always on the road, marriage didn't feel realistic. Still, beneath that practical view, there was a deeper longing. In conversations with Olivia Newton-John, Karen admitted that she truly wanted a happy marriage and a family of her own. Over time, she did begin dating. Her relationships included several well-known figures, among them Tony Danza, Mark Harmon, Steve Martin, and Bill Hudson. These relationships, however, never quite turned into the lasting connection she hoped for. Then, in 1980, everything seemed to change. After a fast-moving romance, Karen married Thomas James Burris on August 31, 1980, at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Burris was 9 years older and already divorced, with a son. Just days before the wedding, Karen recorded a song called "Because We Are in Love," written by Richard and John Bettis. The recording was played during the ceremony, adding a deeply personal touch to the moment. The couple settled in Newport Beach, and for a while, it seemed like Karen might finally have the life she had quietly wished for. But the reality was very different. Karen wanted children. It was something she deeply hoped for. But Burris had previously undergone a vasectomy and refused to reverse it. That single issue created a painful divide that the marriage couldn't overcome. What should have been a new beginning quickly turned into emotional strain. According to close friend Karen Kamen, the marriage became a breaking point, the straw that broke the camel's back. It wasn't just disappointing, it was devastating. By September 1981, Karen had already begun separating her life from Burris in practical ways. She revised her will, leaving their shared home and its contents to him, but everything else, estimated to be worth between $5 million and $10 million, was left to her brother and parents. Just 2 months later, after an argument following a family dinner, the relationship finally collapsed. Karen and Burris separated. On October 28, 1982, while she was a patient at Lenox Hill Hospital, Karen filed for divorce. What had once looked like a dream had quietly turned into another source of pain, one that came at a time when she was already struggling deeply in ways the public still didn't fully understand. Behind the personal life, how did everything slowly start falling apart? Keep watching to find out. The slow descent no one could stop. Karen Carpenter's struggle with her body didn't begin suddenly. It developed slowly, over years, and at first, it didn't seem unusual. While still in high school, she began dieting under a doctor's supervision. She followed the Stillman diet, eating mostly lean foods, drinking large amounts of water, and avoiding anything fatty. At the time, it appeared controlled, even healthy. She brought her weight down to around 120 pounds and maintained it for several years, even as her career with Richard Carpenter continued to rise. But around 1973, something shifted. At the height of the Carpenters' success, Karen saw a photo of herself from a concert. To others, it looked normal. To her, it didn't. She believed her clothing made her appear heavier than she wanted. That moment stayed with her. It changed how she saw herself. She hired a personal trainer, hoping to refine her appearance. But the results didn't match her expectations. The training built muscle, which made her feel heavier instead of thinner. Frustrated, she let the trainer go and decided to take control on her own. From that point on, things became more extreme. She turned to strict calorie counting and intense use of exercise equipment. She quickly lost about 20 pounds and planned to lose even more. Her eating habits also changed in subtle but telling ways, pushing food around her plate, offering bites to others, doing anything to avoid actually eating. By September 1975, her weight had dropped to just 91 pounds. People noticed. At live shows, audiences reacted with shock. Some gasped when they saw her. Fans began writing letters, asking what was wrong. But publicly, Karen never confirmed anything. In a 1981 television interview, when directly asked if she was struggling with anorexia, she brushed it off, saying she was simply pooped. Privately, though, the truth was impossible to ignore. Friends saw it clearly. When Dionne Warwick met Karen for lunch in New York In 1981, she later described being shocked by how thin she had become. It wasn't just weight loss anymore. It was something much more serious. That same year, Karen finally admitted to her brother that she needed help. She reached out to Cherry Boone, who had recovered from anorexia, hoping to find a solution. But recovery wasn't simple. When she contacted a specialist, she was told treatment could take 1 to 3 years. That timeline didn't fit her life. She still had music commitments, expectations, and responsibilities. So she looked for a faster way. Karen began therapy in New York with psychotherapist Stephen Levenkron, but at the same time, she was also taking dangerous steps on her own. Using the name Karen Burris, she obtained thyroid medication to speed up her metabolism. She combined it with heavy use of laxatives, sometimes taking as many as 90 pills in a single night. Her body was being pushed beyond its limits. Despite treatment, her condition worsened. Her weight dropped even further, eventually reaching a critical low of just 77 pounds. She told Levenkron she felt dizzy, that her heart wasn't beating normally. Her body was beginning to fail. In September 1982, she was admitted to Lenox Hill Hospital in New York. Doctors placed her on intravenous nutrition, and for a short time it seemed to help. She gained about 30 pounds relatively quickly, but the sudden weight gain came with a hidden cost. Her heart, already weakened from years of strain, struggled to adjust. Though she appeared more stable afterward, the damage had already been done. In November 1982, Karen returned to California with a renewed sense of purpose. She wanted to rebuild her life, restart her career, finalize her divorce, and begin recording again with Richard. For a moment, it felt like a turning point. She even performed again, singing Christmas carols for friends and children in December. In January 1983, she made a public appearance at a Grammy anniversary event. Though she looked fragile, her spirit seemed bright. She joked, laughed, and told Dionne Warwick that she felt like she had a lot of living left to do. It sounded hopeful. On February 1st, 1983, she saw Richard for the last time. They talked about future plans, including touring again. Just days later, on February 4th, she was expected to finalize her divorce. That morning, everything changed. Karen collapsed in a closet at her parents' home in Downey. When paramedics arrived, she was unconscious. Her heart was barely beating, just once every 10 seconds. She was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. She was pronounced dead at 9:51 a.m. She was only 32 years old. Her funeral, held days later, brought together nearly 1,000 mourners, including friends like Olivia Newton-John and Petula Clark. Even Thomas James Burris, her estranged husband, attended, placing his wedding ring in her casket. The official cause of death, released weeks later, pointed to heart failure linked to anorexia nervosa. Specifically, it was described as cardiotoxicity connected to the illness. There were also questions about the possible role of medications, including ipecac syrup, though this remained disputed. What was clear, however, was the deeper truth. Karen Carpenter didn't lose her life overnight. It was the result of years of quiet suffering, of a condition misunderstood, hidden, and left untreated for far too long. Those closest to her believed that her reliance on laxatives and thyroid medication played a major role in her decline. And many felt that the turning point came when her personal life began to fall apart, when the pressures she carried became too heavy to manage. In the end, her story wasn't just about fame or music. It was about a struggle that too many people saw but didn't fully understand until it was too late. When everything faded, how did her voice still leave an impact? Let's find out. A voice the world could never replace. After the death of Karen Carpenter, the music world struggled to put into words what had been lost. Songwriter Burt Bacharach described her voice as something truly rare, unlike anything he had ever heard before. Over time, that truth only became clearer. Karen's voice didn't just define an era. It quietly shaped generations of artists who came after her. Singers like Madonna, Adele, Beyoncé, Taylor Swift, and Lady Gaga have all been influenced by her style. Others, including Norah Jones, Christina Aguilera, and Lana Del Rey, carried pieces of her softness and emotional depth into their own music. Even legends spoke openly about her talent. Paul McCartney once called her voice the best female voice in the world, praising its warmth and clarity. Elton John described her as having one of the greatest voices of any generation. And it wasn't just her singing. Karen's skill as a drummer earned deep respect from professionals in the field. Musicians like Hal Blaine and Buddy Rich recognized her precision and feel. For years, she appeared in major drummer rankings, something rare for a woman at the time. She had quietly broken barriers, even if she was rarely placed at the center of that story. After her passing, recognition continued to grow. In October 1983, the Carpenters received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Years later, she was ranked among the greatest singers of all time by major outlets, with critics describing her voice as intimate, warm, and almost haunting in its honesty. But her legacy went beyond music. Her death brought widespread attention to anorexia nervosa, a condition that had been largely misunderstood by the public. In response, her family created the Karen A. Carpenter Memorial Foundation to support research and raise awareness for eating disorders. Today, her name still lives on in meaningful ways. What are your thoughts about Richard Carpenter's revelation? Let us know in the comments section below. In the end, this story isn't just about what happened to Karen Carpenter, it's about the truth that stayed hidden for far too long. Through Richard's words, we finally see not just the fame, but the pain behind it. If you felt this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more real stories that deserve to be heard.